So this week's going to be a little different. I'm starting a new series. I want to show the differences between 3D printed, um, resin, and vacuum formed, right? These are the three standard most costumers go through. I've decided to do the Homestead Tusken because there's not really good representation of it out there, and I figured, somebody asked, to be quite honest. So we're going to watch me model, start to finish, a Homestead Tusken. It's not very difficult. I'm going to try and condense it as much as I can because there's a lot of information to take in. So without further ado, me 3D modeling. I suppose I should start. I use Lightwave, I think it's 11. I'm not quite sure. I used to update every, and then I just stopped and I haven't updated it in probably near a decade. So right here I'm just roughing out the basic shape. I think I'm ultimately not going to end up using it because I'm just kind of guessing at this point. So I throw in a couple of lines here and there, get it to where I think it should be, and I realize that it's just not going to work. So I go in and I pull a reference picture and put it up on the screen. And I can see how off I am with that. And it was a huge difference. So I basically just backed it up completely to basic. And started moving things around. I like Lightwave because I can have all four screens open at once. I can jump back and forth between them with key cuts on the number pad. And that really makes things way more useful. I can slightly adjust this and that. And here I'm just kind of blocking out all the basic shapes. You can see here where it does the weird shifting. Lightwave has the ability to smooth shift. Basically I push the tab key and any 3 or 4 sided polygons kind of blend together. And it makes it really easy to see where things are not properly connected. I'm just making the visor a bit bigger here. And then making it a solid piece. That way when I do smooth shift, it all flows properly. I love the fact that Lightwave has layers, and they're so easy to jump through. It's a very intuitive program for me. Most people can't stand it. I absolutely love it. And I'm just doing the brim at this point. I'm cutting it, moving it, cutting it, moving it. I'm kind of neurotic about everything being watertight in all my models. Everything has to match up. Yeah, I could have just done this on top and left it, and it would have been fine. It would have printed fine even. But, if I can, I might as well. Deleting everything that doesn't quite fit, moving everything around a bit more. I thought I'd have more to say about the experience. I guess not. Welding things together, getting rid of polys that don't work, polys that do work. I forgot to cut in a line here, so I put that on real quick. So I tend to work in point by point. So I actually select and make it my own polygons for where I need them. Most programs can handle this. I just really like doing it in Lightwave. So you can see here where the poly just looked weird. It let me know that there was a problem. Honestly, once you get the basic shape down, the rest of it's just, making it look right. These are the little beads on the side of the helmet. I wish I'd made the spacing a little bigger in between each of them, but that's not terrible. Not making all of the multiple polygon sides into just triangles. Like I said, there's a gap in between each of them, and I wish I'd made it just a little larger. It would have stood out just a little more. and I'm connecting them to making both of them into one. And then 'cause that was intense, I decided just to skip it for now. Doing the little knobs, the little nubbins. I'd already modeled these. I can't find the footage for that, so it is what it is. It's not really a super huge deal. Again, I'm just trying to make everything look like I think it should. So I'm deleting everything but the very basic of the mask. Adding in a couple of spots. I use a lot of circles in the background as just layer masks, just so I know, this is a 12-point circle. I need to move the polygons over to here. It's all just redefining and refining. So since it is symmetric, I'm only doing half. And to be honest, I don't even need to do that much. So here I'm just like replicating these stupid little blocks. I counted them on the original, and then I tried to use the same number. Those are all of the individual pieces that I can just kind of gang them all together. I told it to select single pointed polygons, single edged polygons, so I could just have a whole row of them, and I just, selected all the ones I needed. I can't remember most of the commands for this because I used the keyboard shortcuts. I don't really look at what I'm doing. I just kind of do what I'm doing. So I took that, I rotated it 90 degrees, and I made a quick circle. The circle I used for this had weird geometry to it, and I wasn't overtly happy with it. So I decided to start over with that one. And now at this point I'm just selecting each individual chunk, turning it, getting rid of the first one, and then moving down the whole way. And I of course want everything to be super connected because, it's what I do. Yes, in the end the entire model is 100% watertight. Because, why do a thing when you can overdo a thing? And I struggled connecting these two lines together. It wasn't fun or easy. Because you got to kind of move things and make things look like they're not supposed to look. And that messes with my everything must line up. But I've been doing this for so long. I mean, honestly, I kind of see in poly at this point. The important part for this is to remember, if you're selecting a thing, just select the thing. Don't leave it open on the whole model. A Lightwave can hide things, and it's way easier just to hide the things you don't want to adjust. That way you don't accidentally adjust them. And this, I think, is what I came up with. I wasn't overtly happy with it, but it's such a small piece, it's fine. There comes to a point where there's diminishing returns. Now I get the fun part of filling everything in. And I'm just going to start with a big chunk. And I select all the bottom, and I make everything else go away. And then I connect the pieces together and just cut where I need to cut so I can make the form flow properly and make sure that there's enough polygons connected to actually have the right shift together. Because I don't want to have 8 million little polys connect to one point. You kind of want to have everything evenly broken apart. At least I do. So then here I'm just going through and selecting everything and making polygons. I think I did like every 3 on this one. I made a cut and filled it in. It's an interesting technique. I had a lot of problems with the front forehead. It's not the front temple, I'm sorry. And at this point, it's just a big wash of rinse and repeat. Altogether, it took me like 10 hours to model, which isn't terrible. It's not as good as it used to be, but you know, what are you going to do, right? I don't have the time to practice like I used to. I'm just flattening everything so it's solid. These curves underneath would have caused extra polygons and way more math than my printer or my computer needed to handle, let alone the printer. So I'm relatively happy with how it's turning out. But I want a little more smooth. So I cut everything. I made a bigger circle, kind of mirroring the circle there. I am sure there are programs that could do this so much better. I don't know what they are. I'm just trying to line everything up how I think it should be. And that's the hard part about this. Is it's really just, I don't have the prop in my hand. I'm going off of photos. I can only do as much as I can do. I guess during my escapades here, I lost a couple of polys I had to fill in. We're almost to the point where I think it's good. So that green line you just saw, that was it's selecting by edge, and those were single-edged polys. So let me know that I had a couple of points I needed to weld. And in this, there's a bunch of little bitty triangles I forgot to model. So it took forever. This is just an attempt to make everything watertight. So I'm going through and, you know, adding everything where it needs to be added. And then getting rid of all the extra stuff. So when I hit the tab, everything is smooth. So I decided to connect all of this together, and then it occurred to me that I forgot stuff. So I took a piece of the brow, I copied it, and laid it down because there's a double ridge that runs right along the top. And it's got a weird bump in it. So I'm just right now cutting and trying to make everything lay proper. I kind of wish I'd rounded it a little more, but it is what it is. I think it'll be fine. It was fine, actually. This is so weird to watch. Because since I'm voiceovering, obviously, I have to watch this and go over everything. And it's just, I'm like, why did I? Oh, yeah. Almost like I didn't do it. I kind of forget for a second. What's next? And everywhere that has a weird disjointed break, I tend to move. When you smooth shift, you can see where everything is a little off, and it really does make things so much easier. And again, I'm using just random shapes as guidelines. I tend to select poly by or point by point. I don't know why. It's just kind of how I've always done it. Luckily, there's a funky weld where everything everything meets up right here. So if I can, I don't have to be exact or super pretty. But I am happy with it. And most of model work, it's just fiddling with it till you're happy with it. I don't do most other programs because it lacks a level of control that I'm used to. I can legitimately say anywhere in space I can put a dot. I can make a poly exactly how I want to with Lightwave, which is why I absolutely love this program. It's a bit pricey, but I've had it since it wasn't. I'd say I've been using Lightwave for 20 years now. Well, it's got to be a little more than that. Probably about 25 years. I suppose I could look up paperwork and find out when I actually bought it, but I ain't got that kind of time. I probably don't even have that paperwork anymore. The problem I have with Lightwave is I tend to get lost in the details, right? I can zoom in to the unimeter, I believe it's called. It'd be tenths in the really real world, but it's super fine detail. And sometimes I forget that my printer doesn't see that. Jerry's printer doesn't see that. It doesn't have to be that super detailed. And for 3D printing, especially on something I'm gonna finish at the end, good enough really is good enough. I must have forgotten. Oh, I lost a polygon, so I had to remake it. So then now I'm doing the brow. The exact same thing I did to the side. I make one large poly, cut it into a bunch of pieces and shape it, and then make the cross poly, bunch of pieces and shape it, and then just fill in the blanks. The nice thing what I like most about Smooth Shift is if, again, I'm going from the center point out, so everything has the same radial angle. But if you hit the Smooth Shift on Lightwave, it shows you where everything is off, because everything smooths. So wherever that pixel or that point isn't, is where the non-smooth part is. And of course I have to watertight everything. Going through, double checking, welding points, making everything fit proper. I apparently had a moment. So this detail piece, it's kind of an interesting piece that we don't pay much attention to. Never mind, we'll get back to it. I am just kind of faking this as well. I'm trying to remember everything I did to explain what I did, and that's always slightly awkward. And again, this is sped up, I think, like 15 times. This is not a quick process, it's not terrible. It's kind of fun. Lightwave is fantastic for hard body dynamics. Anything that has edges, absolutely fantastic. You want something a little more organic? There's ways of doing it. I just don't know how they. I don't know how they are. I don't know what they are. I'm not quite sure. And just like everything else, I'm just spacing everything so it fits proper, and it looks pretty good. Looks like what I wanted. I cut and I paste. I fill in a couple things because I wanted that to be a slight bevel to it. I didn't want harsh edges. This is, of course, over 2 or 3 days. It wasn't a quick process. It wasn't bad. And since I'm making it symmetric, I got rid of everything on one side, so I could just combine everything. Lots of everything, huh? So to get the base shape of that, I took the medallion itself to another layer, and then I did a Boolean to subtract the helmet. So it gave me a nice angle to follow with that. And I did the same thing with this one. So this was a little more complicated because it didn't want to properly slice. And then I'm just connecting the edges to the edges. Double checking that everything flows proper. Like I said, I've been doing this for coming up on 25 years now. That's the number I'm sticking with. I was not at this level when I started. Nobody is, right? It takes time. It's a process. You have to learn. It's a skill. Anybody can learn how to do this kind of thing. It's not you either do or you don't. Anyone can learn how to do this. It takes practice. It takes time. This part was the worst. This was that weird ridge thing that runs along it, and I could not, for the life of me, figure out how to make it not look phallic. I think that was the intent from the original designer, but, it's not what I wanted to do. So here I'm just I made a couple of cuts. I expanded it so I got the ring in the same edge, or the same angle. Lining everything up as best I can. I cut before, I cut after, and then I put a bunch of them down. Which I'm ultimately unhappy with and end up doing again anyway. Again, I'm selecting just the lines that don't match or that aren't connected, and then I just weld things together until I have one solid piece. Right about here, I think I decided I wanted everything forward one segment. Because there's this weird nubbin in the front. And then as soon as I moved that forward, I was like, oh, that looks way too far. I connect one side to the top, the other side to the ridge. I didn't want to lose any of the shape. So I had to move it in close and make sure that there was a line, just that the tip is connected. And this is one of those few where it would be way easier, well, most of this would be way easier just to easily, sculpt. But I can't repeatably sculpt for other places. So if I decide to release this model, which I haven't made a decision on yet, this is where I decided to move everything forward. So I copied it onto a new layer and moved everything forward a bit. I'm much happier with that. That looks much better. But if I do decide to release the model, it's easier to do that than it is to try and sculpt everyone who wants one a copy. Although that's ultimately what we're doing with the resin casting. Same as before, we're adding in a couple of polygons, cutting them up, rounding everything. I believe at this point we are just filling in this main chunk. I'm happy with everything else. Well, as happy as I ever am. We're all always our own worst critics. So I tend to ask other people what they think. Because I will look at a thing and go, oh, that's garbage. So I had everything but that one row of poly, or one row of points, and I jumped over to another layer and just lined those up rather than trying to see the whole thing, because sometimes it's easier just to get the one thing you're working on, get it lined up, and then focus everything off of it, and that usually works pretty well. I wanted to add just a little more texture, or a little more poly count here, because I make things difficult that don't have to be. So right here, just I did a full subdivide. I smoothed everything out just to see how it looks. Pretty happy with it. I think I go back and forth a couple of times. Just adjustments here and there to make sure everything is nice and even. Making sure everything is fully connected because I missed a bunch of stuff. You always do. So I took the original shell, I shrunk it down a little bit to make sure that it all fit, and I just brought it in as the inside. Filling in all the openings, making sure everything is closed and watertight, because some of us are weird. So is the base model perfect? No, not at all. But I am very, very happy with it. I think it looks like the thing, and in the end, that's all we're going for. Is it has to? I want it to look like the thing, and it looks like the thing. And then here I'm just going through and filling in all these little bitty openings that would have been way easier to do on their own. But you know, let's not focus on details. And I'm pulling up just the one-sided, finding out where things are missing, what wasn't welded that should have been welded. And I believe that's about it. Now I'm just centering everything, making sure my middle line is even. I'm dividing or mirroring both sides, merging it so it's one solid piece. It takes a little bit to get to this point. Back and forth and back and forth. And that's it for Lightwave. This is... what is this stupid program called? It's a stupid program. Autodesk. It's a mesh mixer, right? It took almost a week to figure out that if you push the control button, you can dent. That's all I needed to know. And there's nothing that says anything on the screen. It doesn't say control for dent. You know, it's just so, it's a frustrating program. And this is the one part that I really needed to do. I taught myself a bunch on selectings and all this other stuff that ultimately didn't matter. All I really had to know was control to dent. And I am just denting the heck out of this thing. And it does work, and it turns out fantastic. So I just hold down the control button. It's mirrored, so I only really have to do one side. I'm trying not to go overboard. Bunch of random holes, then changing size, and I didn't want it to look like it's just one. On this front part, I did differently. I didn't do symmetry because I wanted them a little different, so it didn't look like it's been mirrored. I put in a couple of really deep dents, mess with the beads on the side. I'm pretty happy with it. It's turned out well. Way better than I thought it would. I kept looking at it going, does this look right? Because, the pink and yellow and blues just don't. But it did. It makes me happy. I'm saving it. Again. And this part, oh my goodness, this is 15 times speed, by the way. It was a long time. My computer was thinking, and I'm like, oh geez. Did I just kill it? Please tell me I didn't kill it. Just let it go, and it finished. I was like, oh, the goodness. So I bring it into Ultimaker, and I have Jerry's FT5 set up. But that's not what we ended up using. I just put it in here to get a rough idea of scale and how everything would look. Messing around with sizing. Ultimately, I think I went with... I don't remember. But I saved the STL as the size. So that was the model. It turned out really nice. I'm very happy with it. I shipped it over to my buddy Jerry. And he has... I can't remember what type of 3D printer he has. He's one of the larger ones. He printed it out in PETG at 0.1 layer lines. And we get this. It took 70 hours at that resolution, but it turned out amazing. Look at the detail on that. I had a painting mishap, which is why we've got weird textures here, or weird colors here. I'm going to prime it before we go to the next step. And the next step is coating the whole thing. We're going to seal off the visor, seal off the bottom of the face, and then we're going to coat the whole thing in a urethane. I'll show you that one. That's, again, next week, not this week. It turned out perfect. I mean, I'm absolutely over the moon with this thing. It's going to be very, very cool. I'm going to let Kim finish it, and then I'm going to coat it in rubber and make molds, or make a couple of resin casts out of it. And then we're going to vacuum form that, and we'll see what we see. I think it's going to be an interesting comparison to see how different they are, and then we're going to go over price points and all that other stuff. But if you want to see the rest of it, might want to think about liking and subscribing, doing the little thing with the things. You know how it works. Ain't none of us new here. So hopefully I'll see you next week.